Honestly, I'm pretty surprised by how much I'm about to praise episode 3 of The Newgate, and I don't think anything I said last week I take back by any stretch. I think, in general, this show isn't trying to be revolutionary. It's not trying to be amazing or even great. I think it's just a good show and that's its goal. But I am surprised by how great this specific episode was. And I think, as great as it is, I don't think it changes the overall trajectory of this show. That it's just gonna be some simple fun that doesn't really step on its own toes, doesn't try to reinvent the wheel, but just does good things. And in a weird way, this episode you could almost throw into the Unwanted Undead Adventure from the previous anime season, and it would function like an episode in that show. Which, if you followed me during that show, that is some high praise coming from me because that was my favorite show of that season. What's interesting about Shin as a character is that nothing about him's extraordinary, and nothing about this show is extraordinary. But if you like shows like these, you're not going to really have major issues with it outside of probably production, because the production is pretty mediocre. Sometimes it's average, sometimes it's mediocre. My personal issue is actually with the eyes of the character designs. I feel like they're too big half the time, but that could just be a personal issue with me. But in general, an episode that was such a side quest focused episode of, here's this orphanage, it's gonna be shut down because the new priest is coming in, doesn't like the kids, and in order for the one girl to be the priest, because she's the granddaughter or whatever of the previous dead one, she needs this spell, which we can only get if she kills like 150 undead, but obviously that's not something you can kind of do by yourself. Insert our boy, who just so happens to have the orb that she needs. Nothing about anything about this episode is exceptional. It's like perfectly good, but it hits every single note so well that it just becomes pure enjoyment with no red flags. I legitimately can only criticize the production side of this episode because I do think the character model consistency flips every other scene. Like sometimes the characters' heads feels bigger or larger, like smaller, bigger. It can be all over the place. And I don't think any of us really expected this show to be like SAO level production at any point, really. Like, we kind of knew what to expect visually. But the thing about this show is that, like I said last week, sometimes it's good to have a show like this that's just, you know, you're gonna get up there. It's kind of like a palate cleanser. It's dessert. It's not the best thing for you this season, and if you're limited on time, do you need to watch The Newgate? Absolutely not. But it's freaking fun, and I think if we normalize just accepting that some shows are just fun, they're not necessarily trying to be amazing or masterpieces, and you know, that's okay. There are some comfort video games I play that are definitely weaker in story and gameplay than some other games that are coming out or some of my favorites, but I do like going back to them because it's just fun, man, you know, and that's kind of what I have. But it's surprising because when I look at episode 1, I was surprised by how much I enjoyed episode 1, and then with episode 2, it's like, okay, it's weaker than episode 1, but I still just have fun with how simple it is. Episode 3 comes in and I'm like, okay, if this is a good indication of what we can expect, just some simple side quests, not really trying to build this generic harem or like just throwing these cliche scenes, like this is a very simple story, but it has the right amount of emotion. You get to learn about Will's character a bit more, we get to learn about Shin's character a bit more, we're anticipating the reunion with Shni, like, it's a good episode, and I wasn't expecting it to be quite this good. Of course, I have full live reactions over on my Patreon. If you want to see my full and good thoughts to this or any of these episodes, it's going to be over there if you're interested. Now, the big question, do I think this show's going to become great by the end? No. Even if this was like, a source reader couldn't convince me otherwise. My opinion is that this will be a fun show through and through, with certain episodes like this that will have me say, wow, that's better than I was expecting. But as much as I like this episode, it's not that I think it's like an extraordinary jump in quality from, well, it is, I think, in comparison to episode 2, but I think it's pretty close to the enjoyment level of episode 1, but it's just like, most of these shows, they jump into something a little more extraordinary, and I think that happens when the show's more generic. What I mean is like, okay, we know our character is built different. We know that he just casually reveals things that are so out of pocket to the characters in this world, and he has no idea. So now, oh, you heard about this big dragon that was burning down a village? Our guy's gonna go in there and one-shot it, and then everyone's gonna worship the ground he walks on. Instead, like, the first kind of, like, little arc we got is that he stumbles upon the side quest, because he's already gonna be going in the general direction, He already cleared the, recruit the pet that she wanted, which was adorable. So why not pick up the quest that's already at the spot? And it's like, hey, our orphanage is going to get shut down because the new person coming in's a dick, and the girl who we want to lead can't because she doesn't have the purify spell. It is such a basic, simple side quest, but it's the exact type of side quest I would do in a video game because it's simple. It's not like you're crying tears like, oh my god, I feel so bad. It's like you gotta be a heartless bastard not to do the quest, but it's not like I'm gonna be thinking of that quest for the rest of the game. But it's the exact type of thing I'd want to see in a type of video game like this. And I think the idea of that this is a video game world that has now become real, now that all the kind of players have logged out, it creates an interesting dynamic. And the idea that they're not rushing into the reunion with our elf was surprising, because I really thought that was going to happen in episode 3, and instead they're like, yeah, we're going to get there, but, and based on, the end of the episode, we can see that sooner rather than later, mind you, but it's like, the show is like an inch away almost every other frame from doing the most cliche nonsense, predictable nonsense you could ask for. And while what it does isn't revolutionary, it still manages to be fun without any red flags or setting off these mines in the minefield that makes you say, oh, I really gotta justify why I like this. No, like, if I like a shitty show, I'll say I like a shitty show, but like, this is like, it's just perfectly good. I really feel like that was the goal for a show like this. While I would prefer the production to be better, now personally the eye thing could just be me. I think the characters' eyes half the time are far too large. It just feels a little insane. But the thing about it is it's not just simply that, like the character model consistency is constantly off. Like half the time the character models are different shapes and sizes from one scene to the next. It is what it is. It's not the worst thing ever, but it is noticeable if you really are like, wait a second, wasn't that character a bit smaller, a bit big? It's like, it is what it is. But I'm surprised. I quite like this. I thought it had the right amount of emotion. We had the kind of like an Ash Ketchum Pikachu situation going on with the pet dynamic. I thought the fox is going to turn into a big titty waifu like right away once we like named it and everything. And honestly, the bromance growing between Will and Shin is interesting, especially with all the information he's dropping. He's skeptical, but he can kind of tell he's a good guy. There's actually a decent amount to enjoy, and while I do still think this is kind of like a junk food show of the season, it's not. It's kind of like the difference in a weird way. Like if I have a Big Mac, I generally feel kind of gross a little later. I'm like, that didn't really sit that well. But if I go to Subway, well, technically it's still fast food. I don't really feel as gross after eating Subway. I'm like, that's kind of like the best way to put it. There's a lot of these types of shows that I'm like, did I waste my time? I don't really feel that with this show, but maybe that's just me. I don't know, let me know what you're thinking, because we're 3 episodes in. Some people like to follow the 3-episode rule, and I think if you do, this episode, at least if I was to follow a 3-episode rule, this would have cemented to keep on going for me. But I'd love to know what everyone thought, because I definitely felt like you could almost take this exact story and throw it in the Unwanted Undead Adventure, and it would function as an arc in that show, which, like I said, is high praise coming from me. But let me know what you thought down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, of course, ring that bell so you can get notified when I upload more, and like I mentioned, got those full live reactions over on my Patreon, and hey, while you're over there, I'll also give you a video shout out. So today we got Emil Edberg, Azoff Montgomery, Mig021, Matt Ladd, James Wright, and Fox Girl. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care and have a good one.